How's it going, everybody? My name is Matt, and today I'm reviewing the AOC Q2963PM 29-inch Ultra Wide Monitor. Now, this is a very unique monitor sporting the 21:9 form factor, which is useful in many different applications that I will list throughout the video and teach you all about. So let's get into the review. To start off, I'm going to hit you with some specs. It's got a 2560 by 1080p resolution. Normal 1080p is 1920 by 1080, so it's definitely wider, and it's the equivalent to two 1280 by 1080p monitors put together in one monitor. Now, this extra horizontal real estate or resolution is really useful in a lot of different applications because you can, say, have two windows open or a really long window. I'll get into those throughout the video. The refresh rate of this monitor is 60 Hz, so that means it can output 60 FPS as opposed to 120 Hz and 120 FPS. The brightness is 300 nits opposed to the average 250 nits, which is, plenty fine, but I'm all for even brighter screens. And lastly, the contrast ratio is 50 million to 1, which is really not a trustworthy statistic because manufacturers vary on how they measure those stats on contrast ratio, and they can really report whatever they want. So don't trust that at all. This monitor does feature an IPS panel, which basically means it has really good color reproduction and really rich and deep colors, and that the viewing angles are great. So no matter what angle you view it at, you're seeing the right colors and it still looks pretty good. Normally a con to IPS panels is that it has a slow response time, but that's not really the case in this monitor. It still has a 5 millisecond response time, which is about average in today's market in monitors. It's also worth mentioning that I did notice a little bit of input lag in this monitor, which I will get into later in the video. Input lag is not the same as response time. Input lag has to do with all of the hardware inside of the monitor, and I will talk a bit more about that later in the video towards the end. Unboxing this product was actually fairly difficult. It's a huge box and the contents are tightly packed. When you open it up, you will see the monitor itself and some handy accessories. The monitor dominates the package, and right out of the box it looks huge. With it, you get a power brick for power, a VGA cable, a guide disc and other unimportant accessories, the power cable from socket to power brick, and lastly a short HDMI cable in case you don't have one. With specs and the unboxing aside, let's begin the overview of the product. The front of the monitor is fairly basic, a 29-inch diagonal matte screen and a fairly attractive brushed bezel. A nice looking bezel like this can really improve the overall aesthetic of any monitor. On the side, we are looking at the monitor menu buttons that are not labeled, but their functions are indicated on screen when any button is pressed. The stand is an interesting angled rectangular stand thing that has a decent tilt field, being able to tilt a good amount down and a fair amount up. I have found that this stand has more than enough tilt for normal use, but if you have some weird reason that you really need to tilt it down or up, you may need to get an aftermarket stand. On the back of the stand, we're looking at a square branded cutout that covers up the 100 by 100 millimeter base amount. Because part of the stand is built into the monitor, custom mounting it is a little bit awkward. But if your monitor mount supports this size of a 29-inch monitor and the weight, you'll probably be fine. The connectors for this monitor are actually on the stand portion as opposed to the conventional method of having them on the monitor itself. On the bottom, the important ports are the HDMI port on the left and the power connector on the right. On one side of the stand, we are looking at a VGA and DVI port. And on the other side of the stand, you can see one of the two built-in speakers that sound alright for monitor speakers, but really aren't that great. Well, that wraps up the first section to this video, and let's move on to the review portion of this video. There's actually a lot more to this monitor than just specs and an overview. First off, let's talk about the input lag. I mentioned it way earlier in the video, and I will say now that I definitely noticed some input lag in this monitor. As I said, input lag is not the same as response time. It has to do with the hardware in the monitor, and the overall responsiveness. Response time is just a measure between the pixels changing. Input lag is completely like you move your mouse and then it moves on the screen. I definitely noticed some. Tom'sHardware.com rated it at 82 milliseconds. While that is completely fine for like an indie game or a non-serious gamer, if you are actually competitive and you try to win or you play Twitch shooters, you will definitely notice some input lag. You will move your mouse and it will be a teeny hesitation until it actually moves on screen, and that bothered me a lot. I couldn't even game like on Call of Duty or Battlefield on this monitor because of that input lag. It really interferes with the experience. On the topic of gaming, let's talk about the form factor of this monitor. It does indeed sport that 21:9 resolution, which a lot of people think is a great replacement for 3 monitor setups because it is a very wide resolution, so you can have a lot in your viewing field, but that is not the case here. While in many games, this does provide an awesome field of view, an awesome experience, and you can see a lot, and just an overall good user experience, some games it does not, because some games do not support this resolution like they should. Some games, instead of seeing more in your vision, will just stretch out the 1080p image, so it'll end up giving you headaches, it'll end up just being a bad user experience and not too fun to play on. If you can try out your favorite games beforehand, I definitely suggest you do, or look up some videos on it, whatever, just make sure that they work correctly. But that is not the only solution. Sometimes in a lot of older games that don't support the new resolution, you can just put it on 1080p in the game settings and then turn it to windowed, so you just have a 1080p window in your screen and you're playing it in 1080p instead of the super wide form factor. So at this point you may actually be thinking wow, this monitor sucks. That's not actually the case. I probably, ranted on it a little bit too much in those last few scenes, but gaming is not where this monitor shines, and I may have made that impression. This monitor shines in multitasking. When you get the box, as I showed earlier in the video, all over is multitasking capability, multi-screens, all that kind of stuff. You can literally take 2 internet windows, put them on either side of the monitor, locking them to the corners, and you have 2 full-sized internet windows there with no horizontal scroll bars, so you can see the entire web page, scroll down on each, and it's really good for media consumption like that. So yes, this monitor is really awesome for web pages, being able to have 2 different websites up at full size right next to each other. But even more beneficial is video editing. The extra horizontal distance is really a priceless feature. If you are familiar with video editing, you would know that it uses a timeline. And if you have a wide monitor like this, you can see more of the timeline at once, making navigation and editing in general a ton easier. This is by far my favorite part of the monitor. Media consumption is another big feature. While 1080p videos just have black bars on either side, widescreen movies take advantage of the wider form and they don't look too stretched. Now, a lot of the widescreen movies on Netflix kind of downscale themselves, so they only use the inside of the monitor. That's because of the resolution available from Netflix, but if you had the full resolution of 2560 by 1080, it would take up the entire screen and you would get the full widescreen experience. This monitor comes in at around $400, depending on the time you buy it and where you buy it from. It could be a little more, it could be a little less if there's a sale, but it's usually around $400. If you are a video editor and you find it for $400 or less, I highly suggest you pick it up. You could definitely benefit from the extra horizontal real estate because it just makes video editing a complete dream and really swift and easy to work with. But if you are a gamer, I actually suggest you don't get this monitor. Because of that input lag, it's really just interferes with your gameplay and can create a bad user experience. So that about wraps up this video on the review of the AOC 29-inch Ultra Wide Monitor. There are a few things that I couldn't get to in this video in the interest in time, so if you have any questions that weren't answered in this video, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will get back to you. I had this monitor for about 2 weeks, so I definitely know a little bit about it, so I can answer any user experience questions or any technical questions. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, share the video, all that good stuff. As always, my name is Matt, and stay classy.